The Mongols do not know that these prairies are shrinking, drawing back farther to the north, away from the sands of the Gobi, and that they themselves are drawing farther away from the habitations of what is called civilization. One of the first Europeans to venture among them in their homeland was a Franciscan friar, William of Rubruck, and although he saw them 3 generations later, he gives clear testimony of the isolation of their life in the steppes. He said he felt as if he had entered another world when he came among the Tartars, as he calls them. The Tartars have no city of their own, he relates, and they are ignorant of the future. Yet each chieftain knows the limits of his pastures and where he ought to let his herds feed in winter and summer. When they come down to the warmer plains of the south, such pastures as have no water are reserved for winter, when there is snow on the ground. The houses in which they sleep are covered with white felt over a framework of wattled rods. Sometimes the felt is brightened with paintings of vines and birds and beasts. They are mounted upon wagon frames. I measured the distance between the wheels of one to be 20 feet. I have counted 22 bullocks dragging one wagon house. Their household goods and treasure they put in chests upon higher carts drawn by camels that can cross rivers without harm. When the living houses are unloaded from the wagons, their doors are always turned to the south, and the carts within the chests are drawn up in 2 rows about a stone's throw away. The married women get the more beautiful carts made for them. One rich Mongol or Tartar will have from 100 to 200 such carts with chests. When the camp is pitched, the house of the first wife is placed on the west of the Mongols. The others stretch toward the east, a stone's throw apart. When I met such a camp on the move, I thought that a great city was traveling toward us. I was astonished at the immense droves of oxen and horses and flocks of sheep, though I saw very few men to herd them. One girl is able to drive 20 or 30 carts. The ground is quite level, so they fasten the carts and wagons together, and the girl sits on the front of the leading cart, guiding the cattle, while all the rest follow. They travel slowly, only as fast as an ox or a lamb can walk. When the house is on the ground, the bed of the master is placed opposite the door. Over the head of the Lord hangs an image or puppet of felt, which is called the master's brother. When they meet together for drinking, they first sprinkle some of the wine or milk over this idol. After this, a servant goes out of the house with a cup and sprinkles thrice toward the south, kneeling in honor of the fire, and then towards the east in honor of the air, and the north for the dead. He carries drink to the Lord, and his wife, who sits on a bed. In winter, they have excellent drink of rice, millet, or honey meat. In summer, they drink only the mare's milk, which always stands by the door. Beside it is a minstrel with his fiddle. When the Lord has more than one wife, she, with whom he slept the night before, sits beside him that day, and the other wives must come to her house to drink. The gifts the Lord gets that day are put in her chests. As the Lord drinks, one of the servants shouts, "Hi!" and the minstrel begins to play. When they make a great feast, the guests all strike their hands together and dance to the music, the men before the lord and the women before the lady of the house. At a feast, after a victory, they sometimes get beastly drunk. When they want to honor a person, 3 of them take a full cup, moving toward him, singing and dancing and stamping with their feet until he has finished the cup. The men make bows and arrows and saddles. They build the houses and carts, take care of the horses and milk the mares. Of felt, they also make cloths to put under their saddles. During winter, they wear at least 2 fur garments, one with the fur inward, the other with the fur outward. The breeches are made of skins, and they often line their garments with silk shag, which is exceedingly light, soft, and warm. Out of the horns of mountain sheep, they make their large drinking cups of such amazing size that I was hardly able to lift a pair of them with one hand. The Tartars are most excellent hunters, and they get a great share of their food by the chase. They have falcons, gerfalcons, and other hawks in abundance, which they carry on their right hands and cast off after game. The women all sit astride on horseback, like men, binding their mantles round their waists with sky-blue sashes, and they bind another scarf around their breasts. No man can have a wife unless he buys her. So many maids are mature before marriage. Widows never marry, as they believe that they who have served a man in this life shall do so in the next. Hence arises an abominable custom that the son sometimes marries all his father's wives except his own mother. For the household of the father and mother always devolves to the youngest son. He has to provide for all his father's wives. Well, except for the plural marriage thing, that's legal in America. And if you don't make them legal marriages, then again, it's legal in America. But yeah, I don't know. Does the Bible actually forbid that? I think that's an Islamic prohibition, not a Christian prohibition. So I keep promoting it so strongly. The women employ themselves in guiding the wagons, loading the pack animals, milking cows, making butter and dressing skins, in which they use sinews, finely split and twisted into long threads. They likewise make sandals and socks and other garments and felts for the tents. They never wash their garments, saying that it would offend God to do so. They are amazingly afraid of thunder, turning all strangers out of their dwellings, and wrapping themselves up in black felt until it is over. When they wash their hands or heads, they fill their mouths with water, which they squirt out gradually on their hands. When anyone lies sick in bed, a mark is made on the house so that no one may enter, as no Mongol ever visits the sick man except his own servant. When nobles of the great court are sick, watchmen are placed at a distance all around so that no one may enter the vicinity. They dread that evil spirits or bad winds may enter along with the visitors. They consider their magicians are people who practice divination as priests. And well, that's the case with a lot of cultures, isn't it? The frontier in the no man's land between the steppes and cultivation, there are only the crossroad towns where Chinese traders come, corrals for animals with huts of dried mud, and perhaps a small temple or painted Buddhist shrine. At times the nomads drive in horses and sheep, or they sell their winter's catch of furs, marmot and sable and mink to the traders, who cheat them. The traders have iron fire strikers, Chinese silks, and lacquer work, embroidery, thread and silver set with pearls and turquoises to catch the eyes of the nomad women. On their part, the Mongols despise the merchants, traffickers of the hat and girdle people, as they call the town dwellers. But to the Mongols themselves, the hat and girdle or important emblems, to take off their wide crowned felt hats, to loosen their girdles and hang them over their shoulders, was a sign of submission. The men of the tribes did that. When the tribal council chose a new chieftain and raised him, protesting, upon a carpet of felt, for all eyes to see him and know him. To others than their elected chieftains, the Khans, the Mongols, had no least inclination to submit. They knew that in earlier times many tribes had gone forth beyond the steppes to make conquest or to serve new masters, but the elder Mongols had little good to say of that. Why go ye forth to the east and the west, they complained. Why go ye with lust for war? What comes of it, save that your blood is shed like water, your bones heat up like mountains, your strong sons bear the yoke of slaves, your clean daughters are defiled. These elder spokesmen were contemptuous of the Kethayans, who had left the forests to dwell within walls. They have a throne, and what does that mean? They have thousands of women and musicians and murmurers. They spend their hours in hawking and riding about. They fill themselves with wine, keeping worthless persons about to amuse them, and in this way they have fallen into the dirt. Well, think about the modern entertainment culture. They're not too wrong. Better. Well, everybody has worth, but you know what I mean. Better, the elder men argued, to be as the Mongols were, free, owing service to no one, free as the wild fowl that flew, crying over lakes, wandering without the need to settle down. In winter we may eat toward the south, they chanted as they drank. In summer we may eat toward the north. May we find plenty of wild swine and deer in the hunts. To live otherwise as civilized people within walls was to become softened and weak, fit only to be in bondage, to labor under a master, to be ruled, while the nomads were hard and enduring, capable of ruling. This pride of the nomads actuated all they did. They fought savagely to keep their personal liberty. At the same time, they coveted the rich possessions of the civilized areas. Such possessions meant security and endless feasting. The Mongols longed to bring into the steppes and to have for their own the thousands of women, the cartloads of grain, the trained hawks, and limitless wine that the Kathayans and the Golden People enjoyed. They did not think that they, the Mongols, descendants of the Blue Wolf, would ever fall into the dirt. For a while the Mongols wavered between the frontier and the fastness of the inner prairies. In the north there is safety from enemies, but there the wind of the ice world awaits them, and the long nights that breed madness. The line of the Borjagoon is broken. They have no longer the mighty Borjagoon to lead them. The blue-eyed men of power were like strong unbroken rocks and rushing torrents. They have only the steppe aristocracy, the Noyans, and the owners of the great horse herds, as well as the Tarkans, who have the right of keeping the spoil of battle. These are willing to raid and fight along the frontier and to keep the ancestral grazing lands between the Anan and the Kerulan waters, where the dark slopes of the Burkhan Khaldun, the mountain of power, rise over the plain. Here the cattle grazes. The masters of the sheep herds, lesser aristocrats, have to seek different ground. They have feuds with the cattle breeders, and they live closer to the earth, hunting for game. Beyond them, the forest hunters have less claim to distinction. They are more savage. Their Beki are chieftain, half a magician who speaks with spirits. The Uri Angut and the Oirat are forest tribes. They have seen the Virgin, the reindeer spirit, moving at nights through the tree growth. Least of all, the black-boned people who cultivate the earth in the northwest desire to move from the wilderness. They have taken root in the earth. They have no slaves taken in battle to serve them. The shadow of starvation lies over them. The earth, it was said of them, was bitter to them, and the sun did not shine into such a place. The old orderly pastoral existence in which the families of the steppes had their appointed places in grazing and hunting within the Usan, the blood clan, had ended. The Usan, the clans no longer formed a people for mutual protection. Conflict divided them, and except for the wealthy herd owners, they were close to starvation. The younger ones, the chronicler Rashid says of them, failed to obey the wise words of their elders. Many began to steal, to rob, and rebel. The horse herds and cattle were given no quiet. The best horses, ridden incessantly, were giving out and had to be slain. With the thinning of their herds, the Mongols are reduced to hunger. The security of the old nomad life is ended in a turmoil of intertribal conflict. The women, more than men, the steppe women, cherished their freedom. They are mistresses of the yurts. The care of the family property lies upon them. Getting rumbly the tumbly. While the men are off on a hunt or raid or war, the women have to manage as best they can, not knowing what the next day might bring. The Mongol women of that time wore garments like men, sheepskin-lined boots with high heels, often brightly painted. Their breeches and their wide coats, folded over their breasts, are much the same, except that they manage to find silk to wear, if possible. Only their hats look different, for they do not like the wide felt brims that can be turned up during the heat and turned down over the shoulders in a storm. To tend the herds, they have to ride like their men, to make stages of 70 miles in a day. The only veils they wear are the white cloths hanging from below their eyes over their breasts to shield them from dust and the ceaseless wind. They can kill wolves with arrows, and they often go with their men to war. Sometimes they join in the fighting. With them rests the success or failure of the family economy. Their hands must press the felts and split cords from dried tendons of slaughtered animals, curing the hides with salt, or preserve the precious milk by shaking it in leather sacks until it curdles. They gather dung and make it into fuel cakes by stacking it to dry. The tent furniture is no more than can be carried on animal back. Lacquered chests, iron pots, and leather sacks for barley and dried meat. Often on long journeys, some of this dried meat is carried under the saddles, so the warmth and friction of the horse's back will soften it. Dried milk curds, put in a sack with water and shaken into liquid by riding, make a meal at need when the riders cannot dismount to cook. Everything must be put to use for the family. The women are covetous of goods from the outer world. From the unraveled hemp or horsehair, they plait supple lariats for the riders. Inside the gare, they portion out the food and prepare it. When guests appear, they sit ceremoniously at the feet of the husband on his left hand, the side of honor because it is next his heart, the right side of the tent entrance. Each wife has a tent home of her own and servants in the wealthier families. When the master dies, the first wife has little time for mourning. She is the head of the house, responsible for its affairs, unless a grown son or brother takes over her duties. If the dead man be the head of a clan, the first wife rules the clan until his successor is appointed. Then the new chieftain may take the widows of the dead man for his wives. The young girls of the Ordu, the encampment, are not leisurely creatures. Their duty is to aid the elder women, and they do not become important until they are bought or stolen in marriage. After that, they may bind up their long hair, shaving it across the top of their foreheads, and wear a birch diadem with flowers of gold, if the husband be rich, and this husband will not be one of their own intimates. The law of the steppes requires men to marry outside the clan, so the brides leave their own ordus to breed and raise their children among strangers. This is necessary because, marrying cousins or something can't be done for too many generations, or in some cases, not at all. Honor comes to them with the birth of the first son, not before. Young girls, a Mongol Proverbs relates, have long hair and short intelligence, living beside men in the ever-moving camps. Handsome girls must protect themselves or be taken by the men. Well, I guess they mean girls, people don't have wrinkles, right? Lacking a mother, a proverb runs, a girl becomes loose. Not that it is a stigma in the eyes of the steppe dweller, who cares more for the Gelden, the woman experienced at love, than for a timid girl. Even when she is mistress of a yurt, the nomad woman must be ready to deal with wanderers, especially cunning shamans who offer her love spells. Often she is carried off in a raid to become the property of another man and give birth to his children until she is redeemed from captivity or taken by another raider. Now, is it Surah 4, 8, 19? It's not lawful to acquire women by force, to inherit them by force. Another way to render that. Anyways, I'm strongly opposed to forced marriage. Nonetheless, the Bible doesn't really have much in the way of references to outwardly condemn it. So, being raised with that, I didn't really learn anything there. For that ethic, she has the vitality of a splendid animal and the patience of one who pits her body against the blind forces of nature. She must nurse her strength herself, for physicians do not enter the steppes. She is fortunate if she is not weakened by dysentery or broken bones before she is 30. Yet there is a mercy and mischievous spirit in her, and the creatures of the yurt who look to her for nourishment come for her guidance in misfortune. Every mouth, the Mongols say, must be fed. It matters not so much, the steppe dwellers admit, if a man lose his father, if he have a mother. The mother of Genghis Khan was taken by raid from another tribe. She bore sons to his father, Yasukai. After Yasukai's death by poison, she kept life in the boys. She taught them the legends of the Boer Dragoon, putting into their minds the power of the ancestors while they were adolescent. Portai, the first wife of Genghis Khan, brought him something of wealth, a sable cloth, given him at their marriage. She saved him from ambush by his enemies. When she was carried off by Tatars in a raid, she gave him a bastard for his eldest son, but by the sagacity of his mother and the devotion of his wife, Genghis Khan survived. The miracle. In all of this lies the explanation of the strange nature of Genghis Khan. He was hunted through the steppes until he came to realize that his only safety would be the destruction of his enemies. He trusted only his companions of those early outlaw years, those who had drunk the headwaters of the Carillon with him. One had sucked stiffened blood from his throat when he was wounded. Another had watched over him while he slept in the snow. The chosen ones became Andas, brothers in arms, united by the blood they had drunk from the other's veins. Outside this narrow circle of warriors, he trusted no one except Portai and the sons he bred. His suspicion was that of a hunted animal. When he had the power to do so, he scattered the neighboring tribes, tracking down their leaders and slaying them. Those who were of the lineage of the great Khans, he suffocated in felt cloths, or strangled so that he did not cause their blood to run, for that would be a sin liable to be revenged by the power of the sky. Those who came to him of their own will offered to serve him, he cherished and watched. Well, the whole power of the sky, you can think of that in metanomial terms, And he had one quality dear to the nomads. He gave away all he possessed at times to those who fought for his life. He will get down from the horses he rides, they said, and bestow it as a gift. The steppes chanted the strength of his chosen companions. They are his hounds. They feed on human flesh. They are held by him in a leash of iron. Their heads are hard as bronze. Their teeth gnaw into rocks. Their hearts are iron. Night dew is their drink, and the winds speed them when they ride. When he unleashes them, they throw away their whips and carry curved swords in their hands. Then the foam flies from their mouths, and they are filled with joy. Here we see the clearest side of his genius. He could judge men with extraordinary skill and use them. He did not spare them. His leash was really of iron, but he rewarded them immensely. Like most Mongols, he had the patience of a hunter. By degrees, it was never easy. He learned to hold his own sharp temper in check. Unlike the mass of nomads, he had an inflexible determination. He was not satisfied with a victory. He felt no security until the steppes were cleared of all leaders strong enough to resist him. Driven by his own fear of disaster, he enforced his will on the broken tribes by a discipline from which there was no escape. He told one of his commanders, "If anyone fails to obey you, send him to me to be judged. If I know him, if not, put him to death at once." This military discipline had never been so enforced in the steppes, nor had men been so bound before to serve one commander. They came to fear this tall man with the cat-like eyes and the long beard. At the same time, they wondered at his continued victories. The shaman said, "The power of the everlasting blue sky has descended on him here on earth. He is its agent." Now, certainly, such things occur in one way or another, but doesn't mean that heaven approves, as one would say. The year 1206 of the Common Era, the aristocrats of the steppes who had survived these tribal wars assembled around their fires and discussed who should be chosen as leader. Not without argument did they agree on the Mongol who had prevailed in the battles, but no one else was willing to serve as Khan. Two Noyans of the oldest families went to him and said, "We have made up our minds to name you Khan. When you are Khan, we will obey you. We shall stand in the front of battle against your foes. When we take captive beautiful girls, we will give you the best. We'll give the best of them to you. When you hunt, we will start earliest into the field, and the beasts we bring down, we will take to you. If at any time we disobey your word or do injury to you, then take from us our wives and possessions and turn us out into the wastelands."